You know, usually when we meet someone for the very first time, there is this immense, almost subconscious expectation of instant clarity.
Right.
Like, you look at a person's face, you shake their hand, and your brain takes in all these micro expressions in just a fraction of a second. And immediately, it wants to stamp a neat little label right on their forehead.
Oh, absolutely. We crave that binary categorization.
Exactly. We want to know, in like 10 seconds or less, exactly what kind of entity we're dealing with.
Well, it's a survival mechanism at its core. I mean, the human brain consumes a massive amount of energy just processing social dynamics.
Right.
So if we had to deeply analyze the complex psychological makeup of every single person we encountered, like at the grocery store or the office, our cognitive processors would just crash.
We'd be exhausted by breakfast.
Exactly. We rely on rapid categorization to preserve energy and, establish a baseline of predictability.
But the moment you step out of that rapid fire assessment and into the actual lived world of human psychology, that simple labeling system completely shatters.
It really does.
Especially when you try to put those assessments into words. We are operating in a descriptive landscape that is incredibly murky. We want things to be black and white, but human nature is just this massive spectrum of gray.
Yeah, the nuance gets totally lost.
So welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission for you is all about decoding the art of describing people.
We have a really fascinating stack of sources for this one.
We do. We're pulling from a massive psychological index of 638 primary personality traits, a linguistic breakdown of over 60 distinct personality idioms, and some professional writing guides focused on rendering physical appearance.
Without falling into tired tropes, which is the hard part.
Right. And our specific focus today is to explain, in simple words, how you can use idioms to describe your own character traits, as well as those of the people around you.
It's all about finding that descriptive shortcut.
Exactly. Whether you're writing a story, navigating office politics, or just trying to explain your quirks to a new partner, mastering these linguistic shortcuts will fundamentally change how you observe and communicate.
Yeah, it's an incredible toolkit for you to have.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can start throwing around idioms, we really have to isolate what a personality actually is. And crucially, how it differs from something else we talk about all the time, which is character.
Right, because the conflation of those two words is one of the most common hurdles in behavioral psychology.
People use them like they mean the exact same thing.
All the time. We use personality and character interchangeably in casual conversation, but they represent entirely different mechanisms of the human experience.
And looking at the data on those 638 primary traits from our sources, the math itself tells a pretty compelling story about this.
It really does. It's
And-
actually a bit bleak when you look at the numbers.
Yeah, out of that massive list, a whopping 46% of the documented traits are purely negative. Like, we have an incredibly robust vocabulary for words like abrasive, cantankerous, devious, hostile.
And only 37% are positive.
Right. The rest are just neutral. So we have fundamentally engineered our language to identify the bad over the good.
Which ties perfectly back to that cognitive survival mechanism we were just talking about.
How so?
Well, a deeply compassionate person might make your day better, right? But a devious or volatile person poses an active threat to your resources or your safety.
Oh, that makes sense. We need to be able to warn people.
Exactly. We developed a hyper-specific vocabulary for negative traits because accurately communicating a threat to the rest of the group was literally a matter of life and death.
Wow.
But understanding how those traits manifest brings us to the divide between personality and character.
So how do the sources define personality?
Personality is defined as the range of distinctive personal qualities and traits of an individual, specifically as they are presented to the outside world.
So it's what other people see.
Right. It is wholly subjective, it is fluid, it adapts to the environment. It essentially represents who we seem to be. It's the outer shell of behavior.
Okay, so if personality is who we seem to be, character is the underlying architecture.
Precisely. Character is objective. It's the fixed set of morals, beliefs, and learned behaviors that dictate how we treat ourselves and others.
So it doesn't change from room to room.
No, it remains the same. While personality can shift depending on who you're talking to, character requires the validation of society over a lifetime. It represents who we actually are deep down.
Our abstract moral and mental foundation.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Personality is essentially the user interface of an app. It's the buttons, the color scheme, the layout, the part the user actually interacts with.
That's a great way to think about it.
You might switch it into dark mode when you go to a moody cocktail bar and then switch it to a bright, accessible light mode when you're interviewing for a job. But the character is the back-end code running on the server. The SQL databases, the core logic gates.
Yeah, the interface updates, but the core programming dictating the function of the app remains identical.
But let me push back on that a little bit.
Sure.
If personality is just the user interface, and we are constantly switching between light mode and dark mode depending on the environment, doesn't that imply that our personality is fundamentally a mask?
I see where you're going with this.
Like, are we just faking our way through social interactions while our true character sits hidden on a server somewhere?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, adaptation is not the same thing as deception.
Okay.
The mask isn't a lie. It's a specialized tool for environmental navigation. I mean, you don't speak to your grandmother the same way you speak to a contentious vendor at work.
Yeah, definitely not.
The back-end code, like your core respect for others, might remain identical in both situations, but the user interface has to shift to facilitate the interaction.
Right.
And because that interface is the surface layer, it is the first and sometimes only thing we have access to when we describe someone.
Which brings us right to the core of what we're doing today. Since we only have access to that user interface, we need a way to describe it that doesn't involve handing someone a clinical 50-point diagnostic checklist.
Which would be exhausting.
Right. So if you want to explain your own traits in simple words, you use idioms. They're essentially behavioral zip files.
They really are. And the literature outlines a fascinating paradox with idioms.
What's that?
Well, in professional writing or formal psychology, they are sometimes discouraged. They can be seen as cliches. But in practical, everyday communication, they are unmatched in their utility.
Because they're just so fast.
Yes, they provide immediate insight, completely bypassing the need for long-winded exposition. And they give a specific narrative color to storytelling that a sterile list of adjectives completely misses.
I can see the downside, though. Like, if they are highly contextual, a non-native speaker might hear you call someone a dark horse and wonder why on earth you were talking about equestrian sports in the middle of a board meeting.
Yeah, the cultural specificity is the primary friction point for sure.
Right.
An idiom relies on a shared cultural database.
Right.
If the listener doesn't have access to that database, the zip file cannot be extracted, and communication breaks down entirely.
But assuming the shared database is there, I have a challenging question for you.
Hit me.
If I describe someone as a steady Eddie, instead of taking the time to, detail their consistent, reliable, and unpanicked nature, are idioms just a lazy way out? Are we using these catchy phrases to avoid the hard work of actual observation?
What's fascinating here is that cognitive linguistics views idioms not as intellectual laziness, but as peak processing efficiency.
Beef efficiency.
Yeah. When you meet someone, truly understanding their back-end code, their character, takes months or even years of data collection.
True.
An idiom is a rapid-fire cognitive package.
Yeah.
It allows us to instantly categorize complex social behavior so a group can synchronize their interaction with that person in the moment.
Oh, I see.
So you aren't avoiding observation. You are summarizing it into actionable data.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the sources give us this incredible toolkit of idioms to dissect. Let's look at how we deploy these rapid-fire cognitive packages in real life, starting with the baseline of positive social interaction.
The reliable and kind types.
Exactly.
Well, the heart of gold is the universal standard here, indicating exceptional compassion and a nature that always prioritizes others.
Right, but you mentioned Steady Eddie earlier.
Yeah, in terms of functional utility, Steady Eddie is far more descriptive of a specific behavioral pattern. It describes an individual who provides stability in volatile situations.
They are the anchor in the chaos.
Exactly.
Then you have a good egg, which feels a bit more foundational to me. It's less about how they perform under pressure and more about baseline decency.
Right. Morally upright and trustworthy. Just a solid person.
So moving up the energy scale, we hit the energetic and social types. The social butterfly flitting from conversation to conversation.
Or the party animal who serves as the epicenter of a celebration.
Right. But the one that carries the most cultural weight in our sources is the early bird.
Oh, the early bird is a brilliant example of how an idiom actually shapes perception.
Because literally, it just means someone who wakes up before the majority of the population.
Exactly. But culturally, we attach a massive halo effect to it. The idiom carries embedded connotations of moral superiority, industriousness, ambition.
Even if that person wakes up at 5 a.m. just to play video games.
Precisely. They still get the halo.
And closely related in the corporate sphere is the go-getter, the self-starter who actively hunts down their goals.
Very common in performance reviews.
Yeah. But what happens when the user interface isn't so transparent? That leads us to the hidden and unpredictable personalities.
This is where idioms become crucial for assessing risk.
Like the dark horse.
Yes, take the dark horse. This is an individual who keeps their capabilities concealed. They are quiet, unassuming, but they possess unexpected talents.
And they often stun the competition by outperforming the established hierarchy.
Right, they come out of nowhere.
Which is very different from a loose cannon. Like a dark horse is hidden potential, but a loose cannon is uncontained kinetic energy.
It's erratic behavior that creates active chaos in a team setting.
And a wild card is completely unpredictable. Their actions can instantly alter the trajectory of a situation, for better or worse.
Yeah, when a group identifies a loose cannon, the idiom acts as a warning system. It prompts the rest of the team to build redundancies and containment protocols around that person's responsibilities.
It's like a big flashing red light.
Exactly.
And sometimes the threat isn't unpredictable at all, it's just exhausting. Which brings us to the difficult personalities. We all have a pain in the neck in our lives.
Oh, definitely. The constant nuisance.
But the sources highlight more specific behavioral disruptors, like the obnoxious know-it-all.
Right, the know-it-all attempts to dominate the intellectual hierarchy of a room by constantly correcting others. They operate under the delusion that they possess a monopoly on accurate information.
Contrast that with the nosy busybody.
Who ignores hierarchy entirely.
Yeah, they just interfere in everyone else's business. Or the attention-seeking drama queen.
The drama queen idiom is fascinating because it is all about resource extraction.
Resource extraction, like emotional resources.
Yes, they exaggerate emotions and overreact to minor issues, specifically to hijack the room's attention and emotional energy.
Wow, that is a great way to put it.
Finally, we categorize people by how they process reality, the thinkers and feelers.
Like the chronic worrywart, just trapped in a loop of anxious overthinking.
While the clever smart cookie represents quick-witted, agile problem-solving.
And the glass half-full thinker is the ultimate optimist, structurally incapable of focusing on the deficit.
Exactly.
Looking at this entire list, from dark horses to steady eddies, it strikes me that we aren't just summarizing behavior. We are creating mental algorithms.
That's an interesting way to frame it.
Like, if you mentally tag your coworker as a loose cannon, you're installing an algorithm in your brain that filters all of their future actions through that specific lens. You immediately know not to put them in front of a sensitive client. The idiom sets the absolute boundaries for interaction.
It is a functional heuristic. The idiom dictates the parameters of trust and responsibility we assign to that individual going forward.
Okay, so we've cracked how to describe the behavioral user interface, but what about the actual physical hardware?
Ah, right.
How does the physical shell align with these personalities? If we want to describe a glass half full thinker or a busybody in writing, how do we render their face and body without resorting to the most agonizing cliche?
The writing guidelines in the sources are basically militant about this. You must eliminate the literary equivalents of stock photography.
Like what?
Phrases like a chiseled jawline, chocolate brown eyes, or the villain with a facial scar.
Oh man, yeah, if I read that a character has perfectly arched eyebrows, my brain just pictures a plastic mannequin. It glazes right over the words.
Because there is no cognitive friction. The brain has processed chiseled jawline so many times that it essentially skips the text entirely.
So what do we do instead?
To create a memorable physical description, the sources suggest utilizing figurative language that evokes an emotional response rather than just a geometric shape.
Give me an example.
Describe a smile not as warm, but as a crack in a wall.
Oh, wow. That is deeply unsettling in the best way.
Right.
A crack in a wall implies that the friendliness is incredibly fragile, or maybe forced, or that they are a heavily guarded, defensive personality.
Exactly. We're describing a mouth as being like a tightly drawn bow. You aren't just describing thin lips. You're describing suppressed tension, a rigid adherence to rules, a readiness to snap.
That's brilliant. The sources also provide a masterclass in highly specific, often overlooked physical adjectives to build out this hardware. Let's look at body shape.
Okay.
Instead of generic terms like fat or thin, someone might be paunchy, meaning they carry excess weight specifically and only in the stomach area.
Or stocky, which is a compressed, wide, and solid frame.
On the leaner side, lanky describes someone tall and thin. but specifically in an uncoordinated way.
Yeah, and Gangley takes it a step further.
Mhm.
It describes a physical awkwardness in motion, as if they haven't quite figured out how to operate their own limbs.
The facial architecture is just as precise in these sources. We can retire the phrase strong profile.
Please.
Someone might have an aquiline nose, sharp, curved, almost predatory like an eagle,
Or a bulbous nose, which is rounded and fleshy like an onion, inherently softening their appearance.
or a lantern jaw jutting out prominently.
And even the skin provides a canvas for history and health.
Right, skin isn't just pale. It might be sallow, carrying an earthy, yellowish tint that suggests chronic illness or exhaustion.
It could be pasty, which lacks vitality entirely, or translucent, where the veins are visible, suggesting extreme fragility.
Conversely, someone who is deeply tanned and wrinkled instantly communicates decades of outdoor labor or exposure to the elements. You are basically reading their resume on their face.
Exactly.
But hold on, let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Yeah.
If we are using these highly specific physical traits to hint at a character's back-end code, aren't we walking into a massive psychological trap?
How do you mean?
Well, if a writer gives the villain beady, close-set eyes and a sallow complexion, or we meet someone in real life with a lantern jaw and assume they are a natural leader, aren't we just letting physical geometry dictate our assessment of their morals?
This raises an important question, and it highlights one of the most pervasive cognitive biases in human psychology, the halo and horn effect.
Right.
We are biologically predisposed to associate symmetrical, conventionally attractive geometry with positive moral traits, and asymmetrical or irregular geometry with negative moral traits.
So the UI is tricking us into misunderstanding the back-end code.
Exactly. In literature, authors leverage this bias intentionally to create immediate, visceral impressions of a character. But in the real world, it is a massive flaw in our rapid categorization system.
Because a lantern jaw is just bone structure, it doesn't contain leadership code.
No, it doesn't. And an aquiline nose doesn't make someone a devious dark horse. We have to consciously decouple the physical hardware from the behavioral software.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring this all together for you. You now possess a significantly upgraded toolkit for observing and describing the human ecosystem around you.
You really do.
You understand the critical distinction between the adaptable, shifting mask of personality and the deeply embedded, objective code of character. You have this vast arsenal of idioms, from the stabilizing steady eddies to the chaotic loose cannons.
Allowing you to compress complex behavioral patterns into incredibly efficient linguistic shortcuts.
Exactly. And you know how to render the physical hardware of a person using evocative, specific language, completely bypassing the stock photo cliches that put our brains to sleep.
You basically have the vocabulary to navigate the murky waters of human interaction with far more precision now.
But I want to leave you with a final thought, pulling from a contradiction embedded right in the source material.
Let's hear it.
We established that character is fixed, but personality, the user interface, is fluid and adaptable over time. If that is true, what happens when we heavily rely on these highly efficient personality idioms?
Oh, that's interesting.
When we label a colleague a drama queen or a chronic worrywart, we install a mental algorithm that filters all their future actions through that negative lens. Do these catchy linguistic shortcuts actually end up trapping people in static identities?
That's a profound question.
By prioritizing cognitive efficiency, are we accidentally freezing someone's user interface in our minds, effectively blinding ourselves to their growth, and judging their permanent character by a temporary iteration of their personality?
It's definitely something to think about.
That brings us right back to the handshake, doesn't it? We look at a person, we stamp a neat little idiom on their forehead to make our own lives easier, and we walk away thinking we've read the whole book. But maybe that label is the exact thing preventing us from turning the page. Keep that in mind the next time you feel the urge to permanently tag someone as a pain in the neck. Thanks for taking the plunge with us today. Keep diving deep.